You're watching EVH and Gear TV, brought to you by Stewart Travel Guitars. See the incredible stowaway travel guitar at stewartguitars.com. Microphones for EVH and Gear TV are provided by Rode Microphones. And official Van Halen merchandise is provided by VanHalenStore.com. Here's your host from Ontario, Canada, EVH artist Eric Broadbent.
Hey everyone, it is the weekend. Welcome to EVH and Gear TV. We are live, ready to kick off a weekend. Beautiful weather out here. I think we'll talk about some weather over our guest way here in just a moment. But I'm very, very happy to feature an iconic guitar player, something that is just a hodgepodge musical stew of so many styles of music that just results in incredible playing. Mr. Oz Noy. How are you, Oz?
Good. How you doing?
I'm doing great. It's nice to have you here. I mean, holy cow. I'm not gonna lie and say I've known your whole discography all my life and everything about you, but in a very, very short time, I've kind of gone down that rabbit hole of YouTube videos and training videos, and we'll talk about it later on, some of the ways I discovered you, but I don't care how it is that I discovered you. I'm just thrilled that I did, and it's a blessing to be able to talk some guitar with you tonight.
Cool. Excellent.
So you're over in New York, right?
Yeah.
Are you getting some nice weather there today? We had some beautiful weather here today.
Yeah, it's getting nice now. Yeah, it started to get warmer. It's pretty cool.
I'm enjoying that as well, too, because we had, like, you know, with the part of the world that we live in, we can go out in a T-shirt one day, and then you have to put on a big, heavy jacket the next day, right?
It happened here many, many times. It's kind of weird.
And I'm being told tomorrow the weather's not going to be so nice. I'm not sure what it's like your way, but my buddy that lives in Toronto, we're talking about going to see him tomorrow, and he's saying that they're calling for rain and snow again. It's like, come on, this is not fair.
No, New York, I think New York is getting better. It's not as extreme right now. I hope.
I know. Well, fingers crossed for both of us as well, too. So throughout the evening, we're going to jump over to the chat and say hi to a bunch of people. There'll be some questions that come in there as well, too. But before we jump also into kind of a backstory, you can kind of tell us a little about when you started playing guitar and things like that. I want to say a nice big thank you to your public relations team as well, too. Michelle at Mad Ink PR. She's been fantastic.
Yeah, she's awesome.
You know, I mean, this isn't a paying gig. You know, we're not paying you to do this show, and you're taking time out of your schedule to do that. She's not making money off of this particular gig, you know, so we want to thank her and you for your valuable time.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
I'm happy to do it. She's awesome.
She's good. So let's talk about it. So if I'm correct, I don't know if I have the facts straight, but I believe you started playing guitar at 10. Was that right?
Yeah, 10.
What got you into it?
You know, it's kind of weird. I started, I guess I started to listen to the Beatles and to Israeli, you know, radio. So you can hear like Israeli singer-songwriter, pop, rock, stuff like that. And I wanted to be a drummer. I started to kind of hit pants, you know, pants. Yeah, How do you say pots and
pans? Yep.
Yeah, pants. Yeah, not pants. Yeah, but so my mom started to look for a drum teacher for me, and then I had a friend of mine in school that was studying guitar, and he told me, just come to a guitar lesson with me. And so I went, and I don't remember it being any like a big experience for me. And then I started to learn guitar, and I actually remember that I didn't really like practicing much. It was kind of like not really. But what I do remember is my brother started to play bass at the time, and he had a friend of his that used to come to our house, and he started to play Beatles songs and songs, you know, like strumming. And then I went like, oh, okay, that looks fun. So I started to get into that. And then when my dad bought me a little pickup to put on the acoustic guitar, on the nylon string guitar, then I plugged it into an amp and I started making noise. I was like, okay, I can deal with that.
Once you hear that noise, right? You're like, oh, okay, now we're talking.
Yeah, and the neighbors were very unhappy.
Well, something I think that's really cool about that, and it totally makes sense when it comes to you talking about want to be a drummer first. Yeah. Like, there's a lot of guitar players out there, and we'll talk about Eddie Van Halen a couple times tonight, and it's going to feel weird talking to you about Eddie Van Halen, but I'm going to talk about him anyways to you. But he is a guy that rhythm is so very, very important. And with your stylings, it makes sense that you want to be a drummer or maybe a natural drummer at heart, because your rhythm structure is off the charts. Forget about your lead playing. I mean, that just sells itself. But your rhythmic structure is absolutely nuts. So was it the Beatles and things like that kind of really gave you a bit of a starting leg on this rhythm thing?
No, I think what it was when I started to play guitar, obviously suddenly I heard John McLaughlin and Al Di Meola and like those virtuoso guys that were playing really fast. So I wanted to do that, And also I grew up in the 80s, so I started to get into all the shred stuff. And then, you want to play the fast stuff. That wasn't what got me into the thing I was lucky was I started to work with singers and to do session work when I was really young. Like I think my first recording session was when I was 13 or 14 or something like that.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, so I wasn't good, but I was able to play on a song, So I started to do studio work in a really young age on different levels, It wasn't like playing on a Sting record, but, So I got used to playing guitar parts and also playing with a click. So I think that was the first thing that I kind of, at least I knew, okay, I have good time, you know what I mean? That was the first thing. I think the actual approach to rhythm and to rhythm playing, I don't know when it started. I would think that probably when I started to get into more like R&B, like listening to Stevie Wonder and James Brown and Prince, that got it a little deeper, you know what I mean? But I always played rhythm guitar because I used to accompany singers in Israel, like some famous ones, So I think I was always needed to play rhythm guitar,
It's something that is often almost always overlooked. And I say this because this is like an Eddie Van Halen themed show. And, a lot of these kids today, and here again, I use this term loosely when I say kids. Anyone who's under 25 years old is considered a kid to me. But this younger generation, they'll learn these licks verbatim. I mean, they can play the Hot for Teachers. They can play Ice Cream Man. They can play all that stuff. Then you get them to try to play I'm the One or some shuffle swing to it, and they're completely lost. And it's like,
I get students all the time that come to me, and one of the first the thing that is lacking in 99% of them is rhythm. Whether it's rhythm guitar or rhythm in their playing,
Yep. Well, I'm going to give you two names of people completely different, completely different names. And I mean, these guys aren't, shredders per se, but I'm going to say two people, James Hetfield from Metallica and Malcolm Young from rest in peace, from AC/DC. I mean, you look at some of that stuff as much as, hitting a B, A, and a D chord, but try doing it in the tightness that he does. And
big time.
It's not as easy as what you would think.
No, it's a real art form. It's like playing a solo,
I agree.
You need to know how to do that.
I agree. And I think, honestly, too, I mean, a lot of people could, it's not always about the guitar solo. There's always going to be room for a solo, but it's how you can interact with, your bandmates and let them take off on a keyboard solo. You come back on a nice change breakdown. But you mentioned James Brown, and I saw one video that you did, and we'll get into this a little bit too, how a lot of times you can really make your guitar sound like an organ with, I'm not sure which effects you're using, but we'll talk about that. But you did a cover of I Think I Feel Good. Is that? Yeah. My God. James Brown would just be like, would probably feel blessed if he could sing over that.
Well, thank you.
That was pretty damn good. I mean, it's really, really cool. Actually, let's just go there for a quick second. Because on your albums, which we'll talk about tonight, you have a brand new album. We'll talk about that in depth. So sometimes you have the luxury of having keyboard and organ players out there with you. A lot of times it's just a three-piece off the floor. Tell us how you get that guitar to sound like Stevie Ray Vaughan guitar 1 second and a nice big, Hammond or something the next phrase.
The Leslie thing it's just the Leslie pedal, the Leslie stimulator. There's a bunch of them out there. I use the DLS Rotosim.
Okay.
It's just a Leslie simulator, and I turn it on and off when I play a lot, like really fast.
Yeah.
So if you have the pedal, that's pretty much the sound that you're going to get,
Wow. But that's, the thing is, too, though, okay, sure, we can all go buy a pedal and do certain things, but I mean, knowing when to get in and when to get out. Like I told you earlier today, I was doing a live stream just before our show, and I was using a nice flanger, and I use Helix for my main sound now, too. And so I've simulated a EVH flanger in Helix. It sounds just like it. And I have it set so on Helix it's momentary. I have to actually physically hold my foot on that pedal when I want it, because an effect like the Leslie or like a flanger, as cool as that sounds, it could sound horrible if you left it carrying on throughout the passage.
Right.
So you know when to get in and out, and that also helps, I think, having that rhythmic, okay, I know I got to be in here, and I know I got to be out of here at this point.
A part of what I do with the Leslie is I divide the chords from the single notes. So it's almost like I'm accompanying myself. So when I accompany myself, let's say I play a line, and then I'll play a chord, and then with the chord, when I play the chord, I'll put the Leslie on, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't have a momentary switch. I probably should, but I don't know. I kind of got used to do it without it, so I just tap twice, really, you know?
No, if it works, it works.
Yeah.
Here's something you'll get a kick out of. Speaking of a Leslie, years ago when I recorded this one song, I played it today. I used a real Leslie speaker in the studio to simulate this one thing. It's a very clean arpeggiated chord, and it's beautiful Leslie sound. But live, I mean, who's going to bring a Leslie around? And there wasn't really, at the time when I was playing live, there wasn't a lot of Leslie, really, really good Leslie effects that I liked.
Yeah.
So what I did is I took an EVH Phase 90, cranked it up to about almost 3/4, almost full blast.
Yeah.
On a clean guitar, it sounds pretty nice.
Any chorus in effect will do it. Any chorus, a flanger, or phaser, it all will do the same thing if you put it fast enough and it's got the right kind of chorusing.
Mm-hmm.
It make it sounds pretty Leslie-ish. Some will do better than others.
Right.
Like I did a clinic a couple of weeks ago, and I played on somebody else's pedal board.
Mm-hmm.
And he had the mini MXR phaser, that mini thing.
Yep.
And I didn't do it. I just put it on fast because I knew that if I put the thing on fast, it'll sound like a Leslie.
Right.
That thing sounded unbelievable. It sounded like the Stevie Ray Vaughan couldn't stand the weather kind of thing. It sounded like a Leslie. I actually ordered one because I want to try it. It's, you know, so you can get it. Surprisingly, you can get it out of a lot of effects.
Yeah.
That kind of thing, you know.
I'm not sure. Is that the Phase 45?
Maybe, or the Phase 95 or something. It's the mini one.
Yeah, they're making a lot of it. I like
Yeah.
that they're doing the mini pedals now too, because everyone now is competing for real estate on a board. Not everybody wants to have these 17-foot long boards.
Yeah, I know.
You know, especially fly rigs and stuff like that too. Everyone's kind of condensing, so that's very, very cool. Let's jump over to the chat for a second, and when we come back too, you can think about this for a second. I want to talk about like how long did you work on your craft over in Israel and kind of work over there before you decided to make the big move and scary move to North America. So we'll go say hi to a bunch of people. So we've got Lois Chlorine Baconskin in the chat saying, looking forward to the show. Say hi to Oz for me. Please say that I've learned a lot from his funk rhythm guitar lessons on True Fire.
Oh, awesome.
Very nice. Scott Roos, another crazy good player on a crazy good show. Quentin James. And one of the things I want to point out about Quentin James, he's a great player, a good friend of mine. But I think something he's going to take away from the show tonight is I talked about you off the air, was he's crazy getting out of the norm of pentatonic licks instead of being like tick, 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 you know, sure, you know, that kind of thing, and putting some skitty scat. I look at it as the drunk guy walking down the street coming out of the bar. You go, did it over here like that, and that's kind of what you did with that. And Quentin will appreciate that. He can use some of those tips to spice up some pentatonics. Not that he needs it, but he'll enjoy it. Scott Connor is here. Charles Green is here. Richard Henry. Hey, all. Hope you're all good. Looking forward to the show. Love Oz's playing. The Twisted Blues albums were unreal. 1 a.m. and a glass of scotch beside me. It sounds like we're off to a good night. Fantastic. Carlo Santin, my Canadian counterpart over here, a big fan of the show and guitar player. Todd Graff, Nocturnal Butterfly, my beautiful better half. And we have to give a big shout out to our granddaughter today, too, as well, too. It's her 3rd birthday, Paisley. So happy birthday, Paisley. Wally in the box. Thank you. What's up, Doc? Let me see. Will Varela is here. Aaron Short Music is here. Brad Miller, good evening, everyone from Tampa. Let me see. Let's continue down. Richard Henry saying hi to everyone. Aaron says, Aaron Short Music says, my guitar teacher from the UK was and is a huge Oz Noy fan. Very nice. Gary Holt is here, my good buddy. Gary Davlin is here. Let me see. I'll continue down a little bit more, and I'll probably highlight here in a second. Guitar Hack, a phenomenal YouTube channel, says, hey, guys, to everyone here. We've got your first link here to, I think it's your YouTube channel, so we've got that shared as well, too. So we're going to be sharing a bunch of your links throughout the evening, and they're also in the description down below as well, too. Big Fly Multimedia is here. Scott Roos. Continue down here. See if I can catch up with everybody. Denny Allen. We're getting there, and I think we're probably close to that. Stephen Naismith is here. Bam Mozzie is here. Stephen Hurd is here. Michelle is here. She's actually here tonight. There she is.
Michelle. Hello, Michelle.
Thank you, Michelle, for tuning in. That's great. Thank you so much for your invaluable help and time. Brian Cote is here. Going to be meeting up with them tomorrow. Ron Limber is here. Don't know if I've missed anybody, and if I have, I greatly apologize. I'm actually doing better than I normally do with the chat. Chat is not my thing. Absolute mayhem. Chris Bevan. There we go. We're down to Bam Ozzy, so I'm going to highlight his comment. So let's talk about this young kid. You know, gets his guitar now, and he's past the drum kit onto guitar. You start doing some work over in Israel. And what inspired you to make what I would think at that time would be a massive move across the planet?
Well, when I started playing guitar, I got into jazz pretty quick. So I was pretty much playing jazz gigs since I'm 15, really. And in the same time, I started to do recording session, and then it was the 80s, so I was started to play rock and heavy metal, all that kind of stuff. I never played heavy metal, but I really like the shred guitar stuff. So I was playing like jazz, and also at the same time I was doing studio work and playing pop and rock stuff, which was kind of pretty schizophrenic at the time, but I was into that. So through the years, I think from the time I was 16 maybe till the time I was 24, when I left Israel to New York, I always had people around me told me, oh, you got to move to New York, you got to move to New York because that's where it happens, blah, blah, blah. I don't know why, it just was like this thing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So it was always in the back of my mind. And when I was 20, I had a couple of my good friends from Israel. They all left together to New York to study at the New School. Some of them are actually well known, like Avishai Cohen, the bass player. Omer Avital is another great bass player. They're all jazz guys. This trombone player that I used to play with Incognito for a little bit, Avi Lebo, all those guys made like jazz records. When they moved to New York, they became like, and a few other guys that weren't jazz guys. So all of them kind of moved together to New York, left me there all by myself. But they did it, and I realized pretty quickly that they started to get, jazz gigs and get their name around there. So I gained strength and, I guess, balls, you can say, to move.
Sure.
I was 24, and I did the move when I was 24. But, I think the main thing was, like, my good friends were already there.
Nice.
And I also kind of realized, when you're that age, you can kind of do those moves and deal with it. But, I haven't played with all of the Israeli artists, but I play with a lot, and I've done a lot of TV shows and stuff. So I kind of got the hang of it, and I started actually my trio that I can tell the story if you want, but
yeah, please.
The whole concept of my band actually started in Israel, So it was like there wasn't that much going on there for me to kind of, it was a good, let's put it like that, it was a good place to build your craft and exercise, you know what I mean?
For sure. Well, the fact that you're young too, and at that time, no family and no kids to bring over, it's a little easier,
exactly.
than, bringing a whole family, looking for a home or apartment or whatever. And so
at the time, New York, New York was a lot more, making a lot more sense to move to. Like now, it's a whole other thing. I don't know how people even do it because it's kind of sad. But at the time, it was still manageable and possible to do, you know what I mean? Like you save some money, you come here, you can find apartments that were not, it was always expensive and it was always like a struggle, but you can make it, you know what I mean? I was able to find, the place that I'm at, where I'm sitting now, that's the first apartment I ever got in New York. I never left.
Well, New York has changed so much, too. I've been talking about this in some of my other shows as well, too. It was a mecca for all these music stores. It was when you walk down, the street. And it was
more.
Oh, I know. It's completely gone. The internet has killed that, which is a blessing. It's a blessing in disguise what the internet's done for us. I mean, you and I wouldn't be talking tonight to these people had it not been for internet. And there's a lot of other benefits with it as well, too. Artists can get a break now where they couldn't before. They can self-promote themselves. But it's also taken away a lot of good things, and there's so many things. We won't go down that rabbit hole because we'll be all depressed. But it's nice that you made the move, and you got yourself comfortable right away. You had that experience over in Israel that, so if TV gigs and things come up over here.
I can tell you the story about how my band started that's actually interesting. I think that will benefit a lot of people because I get asked that all the time.
Sure.
What happened is when I was in Israel, I as a guitar player, I would get called to do like either TV shows or I played with a couple of pop artists and stuff, but I always wanted to play improvised music. So for a minute, at a certain point, I stopped getting called to do jazz gigs. I think part of it was because guitar is not that popular, So then I started to kind of do my own band and get my own gigs. So I used to have like a Wes Montgomery quartet where I play Wes Montgomery music because I used to be a Wes Montgomery clone. I used to play with a thumb and have a hollow body guitar.
Yeah.
And then at some point I realized that I can't get jazz gigs because there weren't that many gigs, and all the gigs were already kind of booked. So at that time, I started to go and jam with my friends at some rehearsal spaces, just playing like Robin Ford tunes and Stevie Ray Vaughan and stuff. So I went to this one bar that I used to play jazz sometimes with other people, and I asked the guys, like, hey, do you want me to do like a blues night there, like just a trio, like, you know? And he was like, yeah, sure, I don't have that going. So it was kind of a new thing, you know? So I went there, I took up 2 friends of mine, and we went and started to play, and what we did is we started to play all Stevie Ray Vaughan kind of tunes, but instrumental.
Nice.
So I did that for a couple of months, and it was great. And then I realized that I'm getting bored from it, so I started to bring funk and R&B tunes. So I started to bring Stevie Wonder, James Brown, Prince, whatever, all those kind of tunes. And again, I would play them instrumentally. And then what happened is like a couple of months after, I started to get bored from that. So I thought to myself, like, what would happen if I would just play all my jazz vocabulary all over that stuff? And that's really the concept. That's been kind of the concept of my band since, really.
Well,
you know?
When you did the James Brown stuff, I wanted to just ask you about the Stevie Ray Vaughan stuff because I saw the James Brown covers that you've done. So when you're doing Stevie Ray Vaughan, were you kind of handling Stevie's vocal on the melody of the guitar as well too?
No, there's enough instrumentals from Stevie.
Yeah, okay, gotcha.
And there's also some, you know, like I have the guitar. Sometimes he had like intros of tunes, like he had. I think that was an intro for a song, so I would take those kind of things and I would make a blues out of it, you know what I mean?
Right.
There's a bunch of those things in his records that I was even able to play like Cold Shot or one of those things, just play the groove and then improvise, you know? Like I was able to figure it out.
That's wonderful, and I mean that's also the thing I like about this too is you kind of got people might say, well, how can you get bored playing Stevie Ray Vaughan? How can you get bored doing this? But the thing is, you're challenging yourself, and a lot of times we find as guitar players when we get better, you know, we're always looking for the next thing. Okay, now because if you don't have that challenge, you tend to put your guitar in the stand and leave it there a little bit. Yeah,
well, the one thing that I did understand pretty quick was, once I started to play those Stevie Ray Vaughan tunes, I realized, oh man, I don't know the blues at all. Like I have no idea what it is. Like I listened to the Stevie Ray Vaughan records, I tried to transcribe that, but that's only a part of the language, but that's not really the language. So that brought me to start to listen to more like B.B. King and Freddie King and Albert King and Buddy Guy and all that stuff. That kind of got me deeper into that, you know, aspect of the music.
Well, somebody that I know that you discovered that you really, really enjoy, and this is a hot button here on the EVH type of a theme show, is Allan Holdsworth. And you know, for some of the Eddie Van Halen fans that don't know like the whole history, they might just know that Eddie had his own thing. But I mean, when Eddie discovered Allan Holdsworth, you know, somewhere around the Fair Warning album, maybe a little earlier, maybe somewhere in that neighborhood, anyways, like Eddie's guitar playing just went from great to off the wall, stupid. Like a race car almost going to crash into the wall, but always pulling it off. And that was all because of Allan Holdsworth. What was it about him that just wowed you?
Well, I remember when I started to get into jazz, I remember the first guys were like McLaughlin and Al Di Meola, and then Larry Carlton, I think, got in the picture a little bit. And then I discovered Scott Henderson, which was kind of my favorite. But then and then Eric Johnson also, but I went to a guitar teacher and he played me Holdsworth, and that was the greatest thing I've ever heard on guitar. It's still till this day the greatest thing I've ever heard on guitar, really. You know, so I tried over the years to get a little bit into that world, but I got there's no chance for me with that. You know, it's like you play a Strat with heavy strings, there's no freaking way.
Yeah.
You know? But he was probably the greatest guitar player ever lived. But it's not really guitar what he played, you know. It was a whole other thing that came out of, I don't know where, really. It's such a unique, I don't know, extreme phenomena, you know what I mean?
I never got to really appreciate his full catalog. And probably the only reason why I would have discovered him was because of Eddie Van Halen. If Eddie Van Halen likes this type of cola, I'm going to drink that cola. You know what I mean? So when he points out all these other musicians that make him go, wow, I'm going to look at them. But I had a guest on the show quite some time ago, about a year ago. I did a series of interviews with all the guys in the band Sons of Apollo. And Derek Sherinian, a keyboard player, completely out of the element of guitar, he worships guitar players. I mean, and he on keyboards, he plays.
And he tried to play like a guitar player.
Yeah.
I know a bunch of people are kind of like that.
Yeah, and Allan Holdsworth to him is king. Randy Rhoads to him is king. Eddie Van Halen to him is king. Joe Bonamassa, people like that, down the road. But I mean, it's really cool when you see these people that have this skill set, and it's transcending to guitar, keyboards, cello, all these kinds of other instruments, because it's the voice that carries over, right?
No, Allan Holdsworth is his own thing. It's a whole world on itself. It's almost like I don't even consider him a guitar player, you know what I mean?
Okay.
It's kind of like he is, but I've seen him so many times, because every time he came to New York, I used to go and see him. I've seen him many times when he was playing the Iridium, and, last set, on a Sunday night, there wasn't that many people. I just sit in front of him and get depressed. It's devastating to watch him play. It's just absolutely devastating.
I can imagine. Well, here, let's focus on that for a quick second, because that happens to a lot of people. They watch people on YouTube and they watch people play, and whether they're good, bad, anywhere in between. If someone's better than the next person watching, they get depressed and they want to go sell their guitars. That happened to you. You watch Allan Holdsworth and you're like, okay, I'm really bummed out. What can you give?
I'm not really bummed. I'm not bummed out. It's just like it's just devastating to see it. And when you see something like that, my first reaction was like, I don't want to even get close to that world, because I don't have a chance,
But okay, so maybe in your case, no, not bummed out. But let's say some young student, sees someone that can really shred, and they take it the wrong way, and they either get mad at the person, which is their own problem, or they just don't know how to deal with it. What can you offer for that person that is like, okay, what do I do here? What could you share as a piece of advice for that?
Well, first of all, if you don't enjoy the music. But first of all, you have to like the music. It's music. It's not technique. You know what I mean? So you have to really enjoy the music. If you love the music, then you're not going to hate the guy. You might get depressed because he's so great, but then it's supposed to give you a push to develop your own thing. And with Holdsworth, for example, and with a bunch of people like that, I knew that I can't really get into that world. So that kind of pushed me to go somewhere else and do something else, you know what I mean? With his inspiration, of course, True.
And I'm sure you would agree with this, that we always need to surround ourselves with people that are better than us, right?
Of course, all the time.
Yeah. So that, you're that young kid watching Allan Holdsworth. And did you get a chance to talk to him in some of the clubs sometimes, or the venues when it was less popular?
I talked to him one time. I didn't really... Yeah, I talked to him maybe once.
Yeah.
I didn't really know him or anything like that, But he kind of knew of me. One time I said hello, and he said something, but I never really,
Yeah, just
at the time, he was. I've seen him kind of playing really good. Every time I've seen him, he played really good, but it was starting to be the phase when he was drinking a lot,
Oh. Yeah.
So it was kind of like
not the best, maybe at some times.
No, he was still sounding really good, but I knew that it started to get,
There's some struggles there, the demons a little bit, Yeah, for sure. Let's jump back to the chat just for a quick second so I don't get too far behind. Bam Oz is here, Absolute Mayhem. Vance Klein says, hi Oz, enjoyed my lesson with you last year. Looking forward to another one soon. Vance Klein, that's nice. Thanks for joining in, Vance. NB Sears here, Oz is the best. Continue down the chat a little bit. So Stephen Hurd, I want to thank everyone for helping him with his YouTube channel. No problem. That's what we do. Michelle Hines says, guys, great show. Thank you very much, Michelle. We appreciate that. Let's control down a little bit here. When we come back after I read this chat here, I want to ask you what it was like, kind of the culture difference between, the musical, or the musicians for that matter, and over in Israel, and what you were experienced when you come over here to New York and North America. We'll get to that in just a quick second. Terry TG&G is here. Very, very nice. See if I missed anybody else. Got Connor Wolverella. Bobby Lopez is here. Richard Henry, Push Comes to Shove solo is... yes, okay, Push Comes to Shove on Fair Warning. Pure Holdsworth. Have you heard that solo?
I can't... which record is it?
That would be on Fair Warning. check that one out over the weekend. Listen to that one, and you tell me what you think when you hear that. You're going to think, oh my God, that's Allan Holdsworth. For sure. Just fluid and just kind of crazy.
Wow.
Crazy. Yeah, and he really saw something. I think Allan Holdsworth was one of the first people that was like basically made Eddie Van Halen almost want to give up guitar. If that's possible.
They would after hearing you.
Yeah. Pinner94 says, Oz is a beast. Your show in Philly was amazing. Getting lots of great feedback on your shows. And I just scrolled too fast. Will Varela had a question. See if I can ask it. Okay, so Will says, Eric, can you ask Oz, when we were talking about the schooling, he says if that was the new school at New York University. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I didn't go to the new school, but my friends, they went to the new school, in New York.
Gotcha. Very good. Go down a little bit further. We're talking about the Push Comes to Shove solo. Okay, and down towards the bottom. Chris Bevan, Saxon, we're good. Rick Hefner's here. And NBC here says, Oz, you play with the best musicians on the planet. Do you seek them out for projects, or do they contact you wanting to play with you?
Do I what?
He says you play with some of the best musicians on the planet. Do you seek them out for projects, or do they contact you wanting to do some projects? Maybe a little bit of both?
Well, sometimes they'll contact me if there's something, but a lot of those guys, they don't have their own solo stuff, so it's mostly, they get hired by people like me to play with them, to tour with them, to play on the record. So I would say it's mostly me basically hiring them to play.
Gotcha. And there's a comment from David McCain, says, sorry I'm late, love Oz. Hey, Oz, any more recordings with Dweezil?
Oh, I never recorded with Dweezil. No? We're just jamming.
Okay. And see, I'm going to be honest, I don't like to say facts that I don't know are true. I didn't even know you jammed with Dweezil. How was that?
I know Dweezil for a while, and then he called me to do one of his camps, guitar camp. So we did a guitar camp. We played and we all teaching and stuff. There was actually some recording that all of the teacher did with him, but I don't know if he ever did anything with it. And then after that, sometimes, he played on one of my records, and then whenever he plays with a Zappa band, and if I'm around, he'll call me to sit in and play with him, That's pretty much it.
He certainly has no slouch on guitar either, is he?
No, he's awesome.
Absolutely amazing. I did a video a while back. I shared a video, for that matter. I just kind of compared 3 guitar players on the planet who do a really, really mean Eddie Van Halen eruption. And, it was between him, another Canadian guitarist, Pete Thorne. I'm sure you know of Pete Thorne. Yeah. And another young Canadian guitar player. If you don't know about him yet, you want to look him up. He's got some real future in rock and roll for us as guitar players. Is Jacob Deraps. He's from Quebec.
Okay.
Look him up later. I think you'll someone of your caliber will appreciate what he's doing. He's a kind of kid, and he is a kid. He's a young guy. He can plug in like an Ernie Ball or a Les Paul or whatever directly into a plexi and sound like amazing. Where a lot of us have to have all these things in between, reverbs and comfort zones, and a nice security blanket. So it's cool that you get some of these younger generations that can do that. So that's cool. But let's jump back now to the question I was asking you about the cultural differences between Israel, the music scene there, and over here. And was there any shock for you at all?
I think the most shock wasn't the culture as much as it was the level of the jazz in New York. Like, I remember when I came to New York, I was looking for some R&B and funk, and I wasn't really finding it. I was like, whatever, it didn't, and then I was looking for some blues, and there was really no blues in New York, at least from what I was looking for. But then jazz is all over there, and, you go to Smalls or to the Vanguard of 55 bar, and I was, like, really shocked. That really gave me a big slap on the face. So that was the main thing for me in New York. Like, it wasn't a culture shock. It was just the level. And then culturally, I don't know. I don't remember being, like, really, I felt like when I moved to New York, I kind of felt, because I live on the Upper West Side, I kind of felt like it was kind of pretty friendly, kind of like living in Tel Aviv in a way,
Okay.
And in terms of the musicians, I don't think I was acting like an Israeli musician when I lived in Israel, you know what I mean? So I was acting more like musicians here, even when I lived there. So for me, it was totally normal to kind of get here and start working,
Well, it makes sense for sure. where we're going to go into the next territory here is talking about guitar, and I'm going to talk about the Stratocaster because it seems to be one that you gravitate towards a lot. And I know you play some tellies from time to time as well too, but you and I had a kind of a funny little discussion before we went live, and we're talking about the 80s being a really kind of a cool time. And we were joking. I was saying to Oz off the air, saying, I often get accused of being stuck in the 80s. Like, Eric, get out of the 80s, man. You're stuck in the 80s. And we both kind of agreed to this. If we were to take a DeLorean time machine and all of a sudden we ran out of juice and we got stuck in the 80s, I could be quite comfortable living there for many, many years.
Well, I just want to be back in the 80s because it's just a great time. And I don't know, in my life, I guess it was kind of like, like my teens, really,
Yeah. Yeah, no big worries. Even rent, what probably wasn't even a big thing to worry about. Got another guitar, and we'll try to pay the rent tomorrow and all that kind of stuff.
Well, it was for me. It was before I even paid rent. It was like I was in my like 14 to like 18 or 20.
Yeah, so you don't have nothing to worry about then.
It's great.
That's for sure. So where I was going with that is, thinking, okay, you must have been born with a Stratocaster in your hand. And we'll talk about later on why it's so important to you. But talk about some of these kind of maybe more rock guitars. Like, would you have like Super Strats or Charvels or something like that?
Oh, yeah, big time, of course. Well, as I said, when I started playing, I played jazz and rock all at the same time. So I had a hollow body guitar, and then I had a Charvel for a while, and then I had like a Super Strat with like a humbucker. I even have a thing called Hartfield. Fender used to make those guitars, like 2 humbuckers. And, I had all those things, and I used to play, and I had an ADA and the whole Rockman. I used to have a whole thing of Rockman, the whole deal,
That's awesome.
I had in stereo with like Alesis reverbs and delays, But, I remember with all I was playing that stuff, and then there was a guy that came to New York. He's a really dear friend of mine since, but at the time there was a big Israeli artist that brought a couple of American players to play with him, and he brought this guy named Ronnie Peterson.
Okay.
And he used to live in New York, and he's a phenomenal like blues rock guitar player. Till this day, I actually think he's one of the best there is that I know of, So they brought him to Israel, and he started to play with that guy and also do his own gigs. And that was the first time I heard somebody playing like a Strat live and getting that sound, and it really grabbed me. I was like, wow, I want to get that sound. So I remember buying I think it was an American Standard with lace sensor pickups. And that was the first time I started to get that sound, that kind of Fender tone, And I since then, that's pretty much what I've been playing. I just started to get better ones,
Changed the world for you, didn't it?
The what?
It changed the world for you. That Stratocaster.
Yeah, well, that and the fact that I started to listen to Jeff Beck and to Eric Johnson and to Stevie Ray Vaughan, suddenly that sound was just boom. That's it.
Now, I've read in a few interviews where you've gotten like through Fender. You're probably endorsed the brand, right? You're probably a Fender artist. Yeah. So you've got some custom shop relics and all kinds of crazy stuff like that. But every once in a while, too, you've gone into some music stores and pick up some nice ones as well, too.
No, I don't have any originals.
No?
It's all custom shops now.
Okay.
But I do. The two that I used till recently are the two that a custom shop made me. It's those 68 relics, And I have a rosewood one that I played forever. It's a good guitar. It's not the best, but it's really good. I have a red one. It's a maple one. That's really excellent. A lot of people want to buy it from me. So that's a really good one. But this guitar that I hold now, I always go to stores if I'm wherever there are stores that carry custom shops. I always go in and I check them, because with custom shops, you never know. You might get a freak. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Out of 100 guitar, you might get a really good one. So I went and I found this one at Sam Ash in New York 6 months ago, and it kills all my other guitars. That's the guitar I play now.
You can tell, too, just look at, well, obviously, was the neck relic to make it look that worn, or is that some of you, too?
Yeah, it was like that.
Okay. Like I say...
It's a relic one, but it's a really good one. I played it, and I was like, wait a minute, this sounds like a real old guitar. And I told the guy, hey, hold it for me, I'll come tomorrow. And I brought my red guitar, which is like, Eric Johnson, every time I talk to Eric, he's like, hey, what's up with that red guitar, So so it's a good one. And this guitar killed it, like was better. And I was like, I just gave the guy my credit card. I was like, all right, well,
take it. Well, obviously, when you're talking custom shop, you're going to get a lot better experience with the guitars too. But I worked in a Fender dealer for a long time, not a long time, about 5 years. And the truck would show up, and UPS would show up. We'd start unboxing all these guitars. We'd bring them in, and obviously in Canada, when the trucks come in and it's cold, a lot of time we have to let our guitars sit for a long time, acclimatize, whatever. We start opening up these guitars, and we'd go, okay, nice, play a little bit, nice, grab the next one, and all of a sudden, boom, like this, no guitar is the same. Yeah, just
it's kind of frustrating, but that's what guitars are all about. There's, out of every couple, you find a good one,
And I'm sure maybe you find this too. I'm not sure how much time you spend in music stores these days. And I mean, the music stores.
Music stores, I spend as little as possible.
You hate them, do you?
Yeah, I don't have patience for that.
Now, I want to ask you, it's like someone like yourself, who's a very, very accomplished musician. Do you find, if you are in a music store, if you find a reason that you're there, do you want to avoid playing guitar, or do you want to?
I don't hate music stores. It's not that I hate music stores. I just don't have patience. So when I check instruments, I check them really quick.
Right.
So like now, recently when I was on tour, it was actually 2 weeks ago. So I was in Chicago. We had a day off, so I went to Chicago Music Exchange because I'm always looking to see maybe I can find something like a good custom shop that's better than mine, or buying an old guitar for me is problematic because it's just problematic. Even if I had the money to put on it, just touring with stuff like that is problematic. And then I'm not the kind of guy that will have a guitar that would be for playing and then for touring something else. For me, it's the same thing. So, but when I went there, I spent a little time there, but I was looking for a telly. So I told the guy, bring me all your custom shop tellies, Mm-hmm. So I do stuff like that sometimes. If they have stuff that looks like I can find something, then I'll spend time.
And I see what you mean too. I mean, you kind of say whether you're touring or playing, it is the same thing for you because it's the same daily process.
Yeah, if you buy an old guitar, also like I would have to put frets, so that takes the value down, mm-hmm. and I have to change the bridge pickup. That takes it's all those little things, and then you have to travel with it, and travel with like a $20,000 guitar. I don't know how well does that feel when airlines started to.
Oh, I know. No, so I think you made the right choice, and all the little things, the bridge, the pots, all the electronics sometimes. Yeah. Because now, I mean, it'd be one thing if you're going to get it cleaned up and take it to a studio and use for a recording, but you're using on the road where it's the worst of the damage, the weather and just grime and beers and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not
I believe a guitar, like, I don't have a lot of guitars. I have guitars, but I don't have a lot. I believe the guitar, like when I get a guitar, I have to learn it. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It takes like a year to figure it out. So, when I play something, it's like I got to really understand what it is. It's not I can play this strat one day and this other strat the other day. You know what I mean? It's like a thing for me.
Yeah, it's almost like, I don't want to compare it to like dating or something like that, but it's almost like you're learning your new friend, and you're kind of, having some conversations. Sure. And eventually after a few kind of, couple word conversations, you're having some nice, fluent, brilliant dialogue with each other.
When I got my telly, the telly that I have till now, that I play on my records and stuff, it took me like a year to playing it on and off to figure out how to play it, Mm-hmm. And it was the same with the Les Paul. It took me like a year to play it till I got it. Like now, if I take my telly, I plug it in, I was like, oh, no problem, boom. If I plug my Les Paul, it takes me maybe a second, but okay. But it's like, to me, those things takes a while to just kind of click, you know what I mean?
Well, the thing is, it all goes back to that conversation. You're having those little conversations with the guitar, and you don't forget those. If you have a nice conversation over years, even with your buddy you haven't seen him in 30 years, you remember that brilliant conversation you had over some coffees in a fine restaurant or something, you will never forget that. It might just take a minute to kind of remember what you're talking about. So grabbing the Les Paul, okay, I remember. Oh, yeah, okay, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Very cool. At Fender, did you work with Mike Tempesta? Is he your guy there? Is one of your guys, or?
No, I had at the time a guy from Nashville. The A&R guy from Nashville was kind of taking care of James Pennebaker. You know James?
No, I don't know that name. Okay, I'm sorry.
He's not there anymore, but he was great. He
Okay.
really helped me out a lot.
I thought
Like,
about it. I thought it might have been Mike, because Mike works with all three of the brands, basically with Fender, Charvel, and obviously EVH as well. So he's the guy that's helped me out for many, many years on the EVH gear side. So a really, really good team at Fender. I mean, they're a great family for sure.
I know John Cruz is a friend of mine.
Oh yeah, nice.
And John is actually building. I have an order for a Strat and a Tele from John.
Oh
so
boy!
At some point, we'll see what happens.
I don't think you will be disappointed with that.
No, he's great. The reason I did it was because I played some of his instruments, and I was like, "Wow, this is really good." So, I'm friends with him, so I called him. I was like, "Hey, man, can you nail it for me?" And he goes like, "Yeah, just tell me what you like." And,
I've heard if you have an instrument that's been under his eyes and hands and craftsmanship, that you've got something to play for life.
Nothing is 100% with guitars. Like, you can do stuff that is just good, but it's not great, or just, you know what I mean? It's like, you never know. But I've played a couple of his things that were spectacular. So I hope.
Well, that's true, because you look at cars, some people in life have had the luxury of having 20, 30 brand new cars in their lives. I've owned maybe 3 brand new cars in my life, and a lot of used cars. Yeah. Cars can be like guitars. Unless you're starting to buy Bentleys and things like that, but I'm sure if you look at you fine tooth under a microscope, even Bentleys and things like that can have some problems. So you get a guitar so someone builds you this guitar and it's got everything, and it's like, yeah, but I just wish it had this. I don't like the way this 5-way...
No, you never know how a guitar will sound till you build it.
I know, that's right.
You never know. It's like, I played master build guitars that weren't that great.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's like, it's not, it's just kind of a magical thing that happens or doesn't happen,
Exactly. Like your car. You take your car down the road to get a brand new car and your sunroof is rattling. It's like, how can this be? This is a brand new car. It's got 1 mile on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's crazy. Okay, let's jump back over to the chat for a second. When we come back, we're going to talk about, because a lot of interviews I've read and watched of you, I don't realize, I don't think you talked much about Eddie Van Halen, so I want to ask your thoughts on that. Okay. And 1 second here, just send a message. Okay, so David McCain is jumping in saying Dweezil was on Oz's Damn This Groove. Okay, right. Cool, good to know. Thank you, David. And he says, great show, Eric, as always. And RJ the Mad One says, if you have a desire to inspire, you will always love learning and sharing new guitar riffs and songs. I think that was a quote from EVH back in the early 80s. He says, not sure, but at least it sounds good. I love that. Let me see. There's another question. Carlo is also mentioning the 80s were the best decade. I've lived there forever. So does Todd Graff saying that as well. Don Shepard agreeing with that. I think there was... Okay, so Todd Graff asks, do you ever play back in Israel? That's a good question.
I had my band play there a bunch of years ago, a couple of times. I basically don't unless they invite my band. I have a good friend of mine that has a blues band there, so sometimes he'll call me to play with him. But I don't really come to play there. I come to just hang with my family, you know what I mean? So if they bring my band again, then sure, I'll play there. But basically the answer is not much, not really.
Right. And that's the thing, too. Like, where a lot of people, I've had many different artists on the show, and someone will say, hey, bring your band to Boise, Idaho. And, the thing is, like, I'm sure, like, you yourself, if you had the band, you'd love to do it. But at the same time, too, it's fun to play guitar. But when you're going to travel around the world, you have to be compensated. You have to be booked by an agent and maybe possibly a tour to make it worthwhile.
Exactly.
Yeah, you don't just fly over there for one night and say, we're coming back tomorrow. It's got to be a multiple...
It's so expensive to do like a one-off. It's so expensive to do. Most places they can't even afford it. People don't understand it. I always get like requests, oh, come play, blah, 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 or here or there. And they don't get that booking a tour is so complicated.
Mm-hmm.
Doing a one-off, normally, unless it's a big festival with big budgets, it's not possible financially. So it's just like, it's pretty tricky, And then when you book a tour, you only have a certain amount of dates, and you have to make sure that you don't go from here to here. Like, it has to be kind of making sense.
Yes.
So it's pretty tricky to get those things to work out,
That's right.
There's agents and people that's what they do.
Yep, they plot the tour. They completely plot it from point A to point B. You know, and it's the least traveled. You know, a good way of trying to put it in perspective is someone that's never been to a NAMM convention before, and you release them and say, go see everything, and then okay, so you do that the first year, and you might see 30 booths, maybe. Right. Yeah. Then the next year you say, okay, I want to plot this out. I want to see 9 guitar companies. They're my favorite ones. I'm going to plot them out. I want to go see the pickup guys. I want to go see the tremolo guys. Once you start planning and taking your shortest steps, you'll see almost, well, not all of it, but it's going to be a lot more efficient. Efficiency is the key word.
Yes, correct.
For sure.
Yeah. And also, just in general, doing a tour or a one-off, it's really expensive. You know, those things are expensive. So whoever brings you have to make sure that you're going to bring the business back to them, that they'll make their money back and make money. So it's kind of like it's business at the end of the day. If somebody from Israel fly my band, it's really expensive. So I have to make sure that they do all the promotion and that, and then that we bring the people for them to cover their ass and to get money, to make money, you know?
That's right.
No one's doing this as a vanity project for, you know, so it's the whole thing, you know?
That's right. I mean, you might have a few clubs over there that maybe the club owner or maybe someone that works in the venue might be like, okay, I'm an Oz Noy fan. But the thing is, it's like, okay, what is Oz Noy going to do for us at the bottom line when we're all down at the bottom line tonight? We're making some profit, or are we, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And at the end of the day, the clubs are the ones that are taking the risk.
Big time.
So, you know, it's not that easy.
Yeah, it's a big thing. So, you know, just like we were talking about, you know, public relations people earlier tonight, look at the promoters, look at the agents, look at the clubs, look at all these people, that the tour bookers, the drivers, the people that make all these things happen. That's a non-glory job behind the scenes. You know, there's so many players. Like, look at, here's just a complete 180 from where we're going tonight. But let's talk about Kiss for a second. Look at that tour that they're doing now, the End of the Road tour, which is lasting a couple of years. Imagine whoever their guy or girl or team is that's doing, it's a team, obviously, putting that pinpoint map together.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that they're touring, but yeah, it's doing tours is very tricky, you know?
Yeah.
On every level. And it's actually not so glamorous for the artists either.
No. Yeah.
To be totally honest, the only glamorous part is when you go on stage, really.
Exactly.
You know?
You might
and maybe if there's a little party after, but that's pretty much where it ends, you know?
I know. I mean,
most of the day you're either in a hotel or in an airport or in a bus or a van, you know, there's nothing glamorous about that at all.
The old Spinal Tap cliche, hello, Cleveland. I mean, basically, that's what it's like. You don't know where you are sometimes.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. A question from Carlo Santin. He says, what would Oz recommend for someone trying to learn music theory? I know very basic stuff, major and minor scales. Where could he go from there?
It's kind of a hard question to answer in a minute, but what I would say is the best way that I know how to study and teach music theory and harmony is through jazz. So I would say whether you like jazz or you don't like jazz, try to get into it a little bit, that at least you'll learn like the theory behind it, because that's basically the theory behind modern music, really, you know what I mean?
Okay. So
that's what I would recommend.
And Carlo, if you're still listening as well too, check out some of Oz's stuff for sure. Just listen. This is the thing that I find that is my weakest thing as a musician. I do listen to lots of styles, but not enough. I'm more of a rock guy, and sometimes I get in my comfort zone where I'm afraid to check out country. Like a country is a music that I don't want to say I'm afraid of, but I just won't go down that route. And I know there's some amazing players in country, because a lot of them are rock and roll shredders that are doing it for a gig. So there's some great talent there. Jazz, I've never really given enough, open ears to, and I'm going to start doing that. Big bands, like actually there's a lot of big band influence on me as a kid, because my mom would listen to like all the big band stuff, and so I listened to it, but it went in one ear and out the other. But we need to surround ourselves with multiple styles, and that's what's really helped you. I mean, you've taken everything. I call it like a musical stew. You put in everything, and look what's come out.
Yeah, but I also got really lucky at the time where, well, I didn't get lucky. I was just lucky on my own kind of, I guess, talent, you can say, because when I grew up in Israel, in order to work and to play, you didn't have to be like a serious musician or guitar player. You could be good enough to just develop yourself. So I was able to study and develop my jazz chops, and at the same time I could play, you know, pop and rock and stuff, so I could study and develop that, you know what I mean? That was just luck, because I started when I was young and I was in a place where I could kind of sit at home and do it, and then I can do gigs and kind of learn through the gigs what to do, you know?
Mm-hmm.
If I would be in New York, I would never be able to do that.
Yeah.
You know? So that helped.
No, that's good for sure. One more question from the chat, and we're going to jump over. We're going to talk about this Eddie Van Halen fellow. So Big Fly Multimedia says, I'm not afraid to admit that I've been picking my electric guitar here the whole time. And that's actually pretty cool. That's a cool thing, because I watch a lot of guitar shows. I watch a lot of other ones as well, too, that are out there in our community. And it's not a better time to be a guitar player and have YouTube with us the way we do today, because everyone's got guitar shows, and there's these communities that are very, very fun and inviting. And a lot of times I'll pick up, as long as I can hear the people speaking, I'm playing my guitar as well, too, because the guests inspire me to play, and I think that's what it's all about, is sharing this inspiration.
Sure.
Yeah. So let's talk about Eddie Van Halen. So I've read like probably a dozen interviews, different ones, listened to some, read some with you, and, you know, trying to get into the mindset of what makes you tick. And I don't see the name Eddie Van Halen come up very often, and I do think there's probably a bit of a nod towards him, because obviously the 80s and the shred stuff a little bit. Where does this guy fit in your wheelhouse of inspiration?
Well, I listened to tons of Van Halen.
Nice.
Tons of Van Halen when I grew up. I think it's like he's probably like the greatest rock guitar player of all time. Probably him and Vi, you know, to me.
Nice.
Like modern, you know, rock guitar players. So I think they're the kings, really. I think the main thing for me was I was trying to do the tapping thing. I was jamming on with Van Halen records for years, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I just think at some point I realized that that's not my thing, maybe, you know. Oh, Jesus.
You want to go ahead and take it?
No. I'm just... So, you know, that's the... So, I love him. I think he's the greatest.
And that's good way to look at it. It's just not my thing. Paul Gilbert said the exact same thing as well, too. Well, similar, on the same note. When he was on the show, he was talking... It's
not my thing. It's just like I can't play like that, you know?
Right. Well, even someone like, okay, I put you up on these levels of a pedestal, you know, of these massive, massive players with talent like no tomorrow. Paul Gilbert, I look at in the same way, too, where you just, like, the guy is in fun. He makes guitar fun. And he was saying, you know, as a young lad, probably late teen, he was struggling learning some of the Van Halen things like Van Halen, because he didn't do it Eddie Van Halen's way. He eventually found his own thing, and look how well that's turned out for him.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. This is something that's funny is I always get a kick out of this, because this is something I do see in a lot of your interviews where, you know, you might get booked into some type of a tour or a gig or whatever, and you know, people say they'll listen to you play and they'll say like, "Hey, I thought you said this guy was a jazz guy." You know what I mean? And and you kind of have a famous thing that you always say to people, and I hope I'm trying to set up the joke a little bit, but can you kind of say when they say, "I thought this guy was a jazz guy," or "I thought your music was jazz"? You kind of say something.
Well, on my website it says like I the best way to describe it is jazz. It just doesn't sound like it.
Yes, that's exactly it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, that brings us back to what I told you in the beginning, where when I started to play with my band, you know, when I started to do this trio, so it starts as a blues band, then it turned into be like more R&B and funk, and then I just took my jazz vocabulary, and instead of playing it over swing, I started to play it on those other grooves, and this is kind of what I still do in a way. So the improvisation is total jazz, but the band and the interaction is totally jazz, but the music or the grooves are not quite that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I look at it, at least, you know?
Okay, great answer. Nightfly over in the chat says, ask Oz, or he says, ask Oz, I recall Thelonious Monk was a big influence on you. How did you incorporate his piano playing into your guitar playing? Did you transcribe his solos?
I think I transcribed some stuff, maybe not his solos as much as playing his tunes and trying to get his voicings, you know?
Gotcha.
Something about Monk's music, his compositions are very, you can make them sound like different things. Like, first of all, a lot of his stuff really fits the guitar.
Mm-hmm.
And also you can play a Monk tune in different grooves, and it also going to make sense, you know? You know, even on a lot of my records, I record his tunes because I found ways to play them in a way that is going to sit well on the guitar, and also in terms of the rhythmical thing, you know, like I recorded like Trinkle Tinkle as a Texas Shuffle. On this new record, I recorded Bemsha Swing. It's kind of like more like a Bitches Brew kind of thing. I also recorded Evidence twice, actually. Once I recorded it a few records ago. I recorded it's like kind of like a funk thing in 3. And now I did a version of it that is kind of really spacey and open. So you see what I mean? It's like his writing is just so great that you can kind of do anything with it, you know?
Nice.
Yeah, so that's why I like him. I listen to a lot of his stuff. I try to play a lot of his music. I don't know if I actually transcribe his solos, but I definitely try to transcribe some of his voicings.
Okay, well, great answer, detailed answer too. Blackie is here in the chat as well too. Denny Allen says, I hear other artists say it's hard to have any profit from a tour after expenses. I know, like, I mean, the expenses are crazy. I mean, and you don't have the record labels like you did years ago, you know, at least fronting you the money, you know, that kind of stuff. And a lot of people were crazy and going buy the Corvettes and crazy cars and houses too, but that didn't help, and other things. But it is a different world today for sure. Let me see if there's anything else I might have missed here in the chat as well too. Carlo Santin, I'm not opposed to exploring some jazz. I'm not a big jazz fan, but I'm open to learning something about it, especially if it'll help my knowledge of theory. And here's another little tip on that, kind of to go along that same lines, is not only listen to different music, but if you, I've said this many times on the show, a buddy calls you up and says, hey, I want to take you to, I'm going to a concert tonight, I've got an extra ticket, do you want to come with me? And you're like, who are we going to go see, Van Halen? No, it's so-and-so. And you're like, ew, you know, and you're like, so like, perfect example, my 12-year-old, now 13-year-old son has done that twice to me. One was a band from in the UK, Gorillaz, and I like them tremendously now. I love them to death. And a band which is really funny, my 13-year-old son is introducing me to the Smashing Pumpkins, which sounds kind of weird. I grew up on Smashing Pumpkins. You know, when the music would come on the radio, I wouldn't turn it. But I was, you know, it was always Eddie Van Halen. Going to see a Smashing Pumpkins concert just floored me. You know, so seeing artists get out of your comfort zone, go see some artists, country artists, jazz, whatever the case may be. I mean, it's just nothing cooler. I can say this too, even not knowing much about jazz. I remember walking down as a late teen, maybe early 20s, downtown Toronto on Yonge Street, and we all these underground clubs, you know, not underground per se, just walk down the stairs and it'd be open doors or whatever, and there'd be a jazz band playing, and just the atmosphere, people are sitting in there, and there was nothing like it. I don't know who the artists were. They were probably just local guys and girls, but man, they had a crowd. Beautiful. Well,
as long as they have a crowd, that's what's important.
That's right. I know. You need that. And I'm sure you don't have too many venues where you're playing where there's not a big crowd, but I'm sure that can happen sometimes, some smaller clubs. How do you react? Is it just like the muscle memory and all those years of playing and just zoning it? Like if you don't have a good crowd, how do you still keep that mindset going for a good performance?
I can't lie. You know, when you don't have people in the crowd, it bums you out. Mm-hmm. So you just play. You just don't. You know, you just still play and just do what you do. You know, it's much more fun to play for people than not to play for people.
Agreed.
There's really no two ways about it. Anybody that will tell you I don't care is bullshitting you.
Yeah, you want that interaction back. I used to always say it was almost like a you know, when you get a intravenous drip, you know, you're getting at the hospital, you're getting a drip or something, you're almost feeding off the audience that way.
Yeah. So yeah, nobody wants to play to empty rooms.
That's
you
right.
know.
Yeah, that's something that I always loved about Van Halen back in the day. You know, reading those old, the Van Halen Rise and Greg Renoff's book, and you're watching all these bootlegs and listening to the bootlegs and stuff like that. There were times even bands like the Van Halen were playing for the wait staff, and they put on like the pyrotechnics and the lights and everything, and they basically, you know, we're playing for 5,000 people, but we're playing for 5, and that's one of the things that helped discover, the talent.
You know, you got to do what you got to do, you know what I mean? You got to play, and it's important to play, you know?
Yeah.
So if you play for 10 people, and those 10 people are listening, then they're listening. It's fine, you know?
That's right. Here's a very good question from a fan in the chat, and it's going to take us right directly into the next segment here too. So Will Varela is asking us. He says, "Ask Oz about Nuno Bettencourt. He's a very percussive player. What's his opinion?" And I'll just share with you quickly my thoughts on him. I went and saw the Generation Axe tour here in Canada with Carlo. Carlo is one of my friends, and my other buddy Jason. We had Yngwie Malmsteen, Tosin Abasi, Steve Vai, Zach Wilde, and of course Nuno. And so you're thinking like the Steve Vais and all these guys are going to steal this show. And, I've loved Steve my entire life. Even dropped Eddie Van Halen listening for a while. It was all Steve Vai. When I heard Nuno play and watched him play, he literally stole the show. So talk about the percussive and rhythmic player of Nuno. What are your thoughts on him?
I love him. I listened when Extreme came out. I was totally into it. And I actually still follow him. Actually, when I was in LA recently, I went to see him play, and it was great.
He really is. Well,
yeah, and he's a great singer too, so he's gonna get the whole thing together.
I know. Do you know if does he play drums? Did he come from a rhythm background?
I have no idea.
I want to say he is. I'd love to find out.
He's definitely funky. Like, he plays good rhythm guitar for sure.
I know. Yeah, exactly. Well, that's why I want to go for a quick second, and I hope one of our regulars here, Quentin James, is still watching. I'm not sure if he's here because he'll have a cool takeaway from this. So when I talked about you, how I first discovered you was that it's an old lesson. It's got to be probably about 2015, 2014. Not even HD video at the time, but you were doing some pentatonic licks, and I don't want to put you on the spot with this, but if you could even just do a little sample of it, showing how you've taken like a simple pentatonic lick that can be boring, and kind of break up the rhythm, as you say, and make it exciting. Would you be able to show us a little tiny segment of that?
Are you talking about playing with rhythms, or are you talking about?
Yeah, it's basically like breaking down the pentatonic scale, and different timings and different. It's almost like, remember I said earlier down in the program, it's like a drunk guy falling down the street, and it's like switching up the timings and the pentatonic.
Yeah, the rhythm thing is something that a lot of guitar players are lacking of. So just the approach to rhythm. So if, let's say, I'll put a metronome that you
sure
kind of get the idea, but so if you play a scale, like the pentatonic scale, so that's boring. Whatever you do, even if you play it really fast, it's still boring. There's nothing to it. But if you start thinking rhythmically about it, then it sounds sort of like music, So what I did is I mostly played the scale up and down. I played a little bit with the notes, but the idea was like rhythmical, and that's something that's lacking a lot of guitar players. And that's actually something that breaks a lot of the, the rut in your playing when you start thinking more about rhythms than, the notes or something like that. Like, you take a couple of notes and you just kind of really dig into the rhythms.
Yeah.
And that's something that you just have to kind of practice and get used to doing more than anything,
That is exactly what I was actually hoping to see, and that's what my first exposure to you was, that simple lesson. So yeah. I think it's fantastic, and I also look at it as, I always try to give people analogies, just so they can, if they don't get it on guitar, maybe they can get it in real life. You're gonna get from point A to point B in your car when you get in the car. You're going to get there probably the same time every day, but maybe one day, why don't you take a nice scenic route as opposed to that same old falling asleep at the wheel drive? Yeah. But that's what you've done with that passage. You know what I mean? Yeah. And like, I was tapping my head. I switched the camera so I didn't look goofy doing it, but I'm really getting into the rhythm, and I felt that. Yeah, it's nice.
Well, groove is very important, For
sure.
First of all, if you're a guitar player and if you're a musician and you don't have good rhythm or good time, you can't really be a musician. But even if you do have that, if you're a guitar player and you can play good rhythm guitar, you're always going to work. Always.
Right.
If you're a guitar player and you play good solos, maybe not. You know what I mean? So it's really important to have that rhythmic aspect. Plus, if you want to do recording sessions, you have to have impeccable time. Like, no, that's the main thing. Otherwise, you can't do recording sessions. So this whole thing is really important. Like the rhythm thing is really important.
For sure. Now, question for you on that. So you talked about earlier, being able to play to a click track, things like that. Some musicians can play to a click track. I can't play to a click track to save my life, and that will probably also show my weaknesses as a musician in some areas. Yeah. But do you think it's a bad thing if a person can't play to a click track, but yet, let's say, like some of these drummers that you play with, let's say they've laid down their track to a click track, and now you're playing to them, and you can't play.
If you can't play to a click track, nothing's gonna save you.
Okay, there you go. So you got to make sure you get that. So
yeah, if you can't play to a click, you're not there.
Then you know what? I got some homework to do. I've got lots of homework, so I'll work on it.
Doesn't matter if you have whoever's gonna play drums, it's gonna still feel weak and not in time.
You know what it is? It's almost. I think what my problem with the damn thing is, I hear two things going on at the same time. It's like two conversations. If I hear someone over here talking, someone over here is talking, they cancel one another out. It's like I can't multi-listen, so I'll work on that. Richard Henry wants to know, he says, what's Oz's approach to playing through the changes? Are there any specific device? Oh yeah, I had this one written down for him tonight as well too. He wants to know Oz's approach to playing through the changes. Are there any specific devices he used to get through them? I find I am playing over them and not through them.
I can't really answer. The only thing I can say is either you can probably get some of my instructional videos. I show some of my concepts because I got a bunch of them and I can't really explain it in like 2 minutes.
Oh, no, of course, yep.
Yeah, so I would say there's a bunch of instructional videos that you can get that you can kind of see. If you go on my website, there's a store page and there's all my instructional videos there. So you can click it, it goes to the company that I've done it for, and then you can see some, just some previews, and you can see what it is, and then you can get it, if you think that will work for you.
Well, some of the things I've seen just on YouTube that are free, just things that you've done with different people, whatever, maybe to promote other things.
I'll say one thing, though. There's no shortcuts.
No, I know.
And YouTube's trying to give you shortcuts. That ain't going to work. That stuff doesn't work. Like, there's no shortcuts when it comes to music, to learning music,
I agree with that. Here's a perfect example. And I hate to keep saying Van Halen a lot, but it is a Van Halen themed show. All of us out in the circle of the Van Halen guys are always trying to figure out how to play Eruption, how to play this, how to play that. And we could watch 50 videos. Yeah. And out of the 50, there's probably 45 really good ones. Out of those 45, there's probably 10 that are like right on the money. And out of those 10, there's probably a couple that are almost flawless. But maybe the notes are right, but you're just not getting the feel. And the feel sometimes is more important than the notes. And then rhythm structure. Maybe the person's not getting the rhythm. And I agree with you. We are looking for shortcuts. Maybe use it as a guide, but certainly, and a lot of another thing where people are going wrong as well too. And I know rhythm is kind of like your middle name. I know you say it so much. The fact that a lot of these young kids out there that are doing the home bedroom playing, that kind of thing, get out with a band. Get out on a open mic.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
Yes, because it's so different sitting on the edge of your couch or your chair.
And, yeah, absolutely.
You have to do that too, because it's a difference. Most of these people are playing sitting down, right? You get up there and you got a real big tube amp behind you now. When you've had, you haven't used that before. You have to hear your drummer from across the stage. It's a whole new world, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a whole other thing for sure.
That's right. Zach Thong is here jumping in as well too, and saying hello to Oz and myself. So. One of the big things I want to talk about tonight, we're actually doing about 15 more minutes before we wrap up the program. You've got a brand new record out right now that you're promoting and doing the tour. The Booga, I want to say, make sure I don't tongue twist this. Booga Looga Loo. Am I saying that right?
Boogaloo, yeah. It's true.
Tell us about it.
When I make records, I try to find like some kind of a concept to write. So, like for example, when I did those Twisted Blues records, I did Volume 1 and Volume 2. It was taking like blues forms and harmony and kind of incorporate jazz into that, So I did 2 of those. When I did my last studio album, the Who Gives a Funk, that was more like kind of more almost like a James Brown kind of like funk and soul thing where I tried to write really simple stuff. So on this record, I tried to make like a Boogaloo record. Like I would say it's like Bitches Brew meets Boogaloo, It's nice. Like I had this kind of concept because I play a lot of organ trio stuff, and organists, they have a lot of their repertoire. They have cool Boogaloo tunes. So I really like doing that stuff. So I tried to write in that style, and this is what kind of came out. It's actually, this is actually volume 1 of 2 records. It's not exactly volume 1. I'm not going to call it volume 1, volume 2, but there's another record that's going to come out next year. That's the second part of it.
Nice.
Because it's almost fully recorded. I had a lot of music, so.
That's good. That's nice to look forward to because you've already got some things in the bank kind of thing ready to go.
Yeah, but it's mostly like Boogaloo kind of vibe, you know?
Well,
That's
this is
kind of the idea behind it.
I know some of the artists I'm going to get you to talk about in a second. I know they would say the same thing. They would say, yeah, we've got Oz Noy on playing with us. But tell us some names that I know some people are going to just go, oh, my goodness, when they hear the drummers and the bass players that you've worked with like currently. Share a few.
Well, on this record, we did 3 recording sessions. So, first recording session was Steve Ferroni played drums, Willie played bass, and Jerry Z played organ. Second session was Vinny Colaiuta played drums, and John Petitucci plays bass, and Brian Charette played keyboard. And the third session was Dave Weckl played drums, James Genus played drums, and Brian Charette played organ. Those were the rhythm sections. And then I did some overdubs of some friends that kind of were guesting on it. So Kevin Hayes played piano one song. It's like more like jazz New York guys, like Seamus Blake played saxophone, and Drummond played flute. It was just like New York cats, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, New York guys as a solo artist, you know, like guest artist, you know. On the next record, I'm going to have that also.
Good. Well,
yeah.
Watching YouTube today, I saw a couple. I wish I could name the one video, but there's one where you were doing a studio session where we had the drummer locked away in the drum room, and you guys were all playing live off the floor, and Willie was playing bass on that one. It was just beautiful. I mean, watching him play too, I mean, is a real treat as well too. Everyone's got their thing, you know, and I'm sure there's time.
The way I make records, it's all live. It's not that I'm doing overdubs. I recorded like a jazz record. We're all playing live.
Nice.
And then, you know, we do a bunch of takes, and then I take it home and I just kind of edit it and choose the good stuff.
Perfect.
You know, yeah. Try to keep the organic sound of a live band.
Yeah,
know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is for my friend Richard Henry, who asked you the question just a moment ago about getting through the changes, just so he doesn't think I forgot. I'm not sure if you can see it.
I can't see it.
No, he'll see it. I had his question written down here, so I did not forget you, Richard. I always have a nice long itinerary before every show, and I promised him I would not forget to ask you that question. But the last couple questions here before we get ready to wrap up. So I was at NAMM in January, and I had no clue you were there. And I mean, we weren't talking yet through our people together to even know that you were there or you were coming on the show. But I guess you did something with Line 6, and I work kind of closely with them. I'm not endorsing their product, whatever, but I do a show for them called the Helix Hour. And you were doing you were kind of on their panel for the Stomp. Is that correct?
Yeah, or the HX Stomp. Yeah.
Have you had a chance to play with that much yet, or how are you making out with that?
Yeah, I use the HX effect on everything now.
Right on.
Yeah, on all my boards. Yeah.
See, I've got the Stomp here as well too. I use my main unit is Helix.
I use the Stomp. I use the effect.
Oh, you use an HX effects. Okay, yeah, and that's behind. You can maybe see it's just above my head.
Yeah, that's what I use. Yeah.
I'm not using that much now for the sole reason that I don't use amps anymore. I mean, I'm just going to say it, be honest with you, I don't use amps. I'm using all digital. So that, it doesn't really serve the purpose, right? It's more to be used in conjunction with a pedal board or something like that. But,
sure.
So how are you liking it as a one and all solution for effects? Because it give you kind of a lot what you need?
Well, I use Line 6 in a very specific way. So I use some of the more quirky, like, delays from it, and also some regular delays. I use this weird tremolo. I use like a pitch shifter kind of thing, and I use a looper.
Okay.
So that's what I use it for. I have other delays on the side that I use for kind of more basic stuff, you know?
I have a feeling that the way you just described that, you probably use a lot of the old legacy effects.
Yes, I do. Still.
Yeah. Like the DL4, you probably use like the DL4s and stuff back in the day.
That's how I started my whole journey with Line 6 with the DL4.
Isn't that something? That's crazy.
Yeah.
Now,
change the music business.
Do you ever, like, throughout the hotels or anything like that, do you ever use Helix or anything like that, or?
No.
No?
I don't do anything in hotel rooms, really, you know what I mean?
When you're there, it's strictly wind down, right?
Yeah, and I can play a little bit. You know, I can plug into some and play, but I don't. No, not really.
Well, I think it's cool in a way too. Some people do need to know when to take a break. And, there's other people that the hotel room is a writing session. Maybe it's a warm-up session or whatever else. Throwing TVs out of the window session. I don't know what it may be. That's an old Van Halen deal, but and Motley Crue. But it's nice to know when to take a break for sure. Yeah. What is
the Helix stuff? They got great stuff on there. First of all, the effects are great, but the thing is that a lot of those things where there is the Helix or the fractal and all those things, it's like. It's not that they don't sound good. Like if you play them in a track, especially when it's not the main voice of the track, you can't really tell if it's a direct or to an amp. You know what I mean? But when you make it like the main thing, it's missing a little bit of the depth of a real amp. I don't think anybody really figured that one out yet. So. None of that stuff really cuts it for me, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a different world, right? We're just kind of coming to this world where modeling now it's actually catching up. It has growth to go yet. There's no doubt about it. But I think it's a time, and with all those people involved, like the Helix, the Kempers, the Head Rush, all there's the Boss. Boss got some great stuff.
Yeah, it's everything. It's getting closer. Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely getting better for sure.
So let's talk about the actual pedal board in itself. What is the meat and potatoes of your pedal board? You've mentioned HX effects already, but what are some of the other ones you talked about, like Leslie pedals and things like that? Are there some certain pedals that you have to have? They're like your keepers?
Yeah. Well, I can tell you my chain is pretty much the same through. I go into a wah-wah, and then I have an Octavia, a Dunlop Octavia. Then I usually have my own fuzz. I have that Vemarum fuzz. It's called Oz Fuzz. So I use that. After that, I go into the exotic. I used to use the AC and the RC.
Okay.
And now it's they made this pedal for me that's called RCAC. It's like got my name on it.
Nice.
So that's kind of really my main sound, really. Like if I take one pedal, that'll be it, But then I also use a Tube Screamer and 808 for the more kind of twangy stuff, bluesy stuff.
Gotcha.
And after that, it's basically just like I have a Leslie simulator of some sort. I have a Univibe. And from there, I just go to delay. So I have a slap delay that's always on, a Boss DD7. That's always on. Then I have another delay, DD7 that is kind of one repeat for solos, just give us a little depth. And then I have some type of a long delay. I used to use Memory Man for years, but now I'm able to get the same thing out of the HX from HX Effects.
Nice.
It's like close enough. It's not exactly that, but it's close enough. So that's pretty much it, really. And then I have all these whacked effects on the HX, because the thing about all the Line 6 stuff, that's why I used them for so many years, is when the M version came out, the M9, M13 and stuff, everything is tap tempo. So, you plug, like you tap tempo your delay and your tremolo and stuff. So you get all these really cool things and they're all synced,
Nice, yeah.
And that's really, really good. So that's what that's why the Line 6 stuff is really the only thing that does it, Well,
that's good. That's good to know for sure. I'm sure they'll be happy to hear that for sure. Nice. Back when I was using pedals as well, too, you mentioned several Boss delays. I did the same thing, too, and I kind of stole this from Joe Satriani. I was using two Boss DD3s, and I'd have one around 250 milliseconds, one around 350 or a little higher. And sometimes, believe it or not, like the 350 would be for a nice lead, 250 around rhythm styles. But I would occasionally put them on together, and even though you're not running a stereo setup, that ambiance would really build upon itself.
Yeah,
absolutely. Very, very nice. Yeah, I kind of miss that in some ways, but now I just, for the convenience, I like being all digital, and I'm not touring anymore, so I'm strictly a web guy, right? Yeah. And so digital is a godsend to me. Because if you watch some of my older streams, you'll see some way back in the day when I would mic that thing up back there. It's still mic'd up. I still got a mic run to the board. I just don't turn it on. 100-watt head, 6 feet away from me. And to get a good sound, I'm on about 3. So I've got like beer bottles rattling on the thing while I'm playing. It's just not conducive for a small room. And I walk out of here, I'm like, honey, I'm like, I can't hear nothing, right?
Of course.
Yeah, so it's cool.
That ain't gonna work.
No, it doesn't work for that. So last few people in the chat, say hi to them as well too. I saw several people, including Guitar Hack, saying he's playing guitar as he's watching. So that's cool. That's it. If we've inspired you to pick up a guitar, that's awesome. Old Guys Guitar Vlog. Quentin James is here, and Quentin, I hope you saw some of that pentatonic stuff. If not, watch it back. You're gonna love it. I'm gonna be rewatching it, and I'll send you the link to the full video I saw as well too. Terry Himes is here. Let me see. Old Guys Guitar Vlog. I mentioned him as well too. Just go down towards the bottom. Make sure I haven't missed any questions. And I apologize greatly if I have. I think I've got just about everybody. So listen, this has been an absolute pleasure. What a way to kick off a nice, beautiful, hopefully beautiful weekend. Oz, I want to thank you for your time, and I'm wishing you the greatest luck with this record and the tour, and be safe out there, and just have a great time and inspire more people like you've done tonight with us on that guitar.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Oh, a real pleasure. Rob Cunningham is just jumping in very late at the very last moment, and he says, "Nice shirt." Do you know Rob Cunningham? Do you play D'Addario strings at all?
Yeah.
Okay, Rob Cunningham. He's Mr. D'Addario himself. He says,
I have the same shirt.
Nice. He says, "Nice shirt, Rob." Thanks for tuning in, man. I love Rob to death. He's great. He's convinced me. Well, he's not just him. But I used to play Ernie Ball Super Sinky strings. That were my. I think I even have an old half of a pack left. I do. This is what's left in an old pack.
Ernie. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And I tried. He gave me a set of the NYXLs to try one time, and they're on my black USA PV Wolfgang. He sent them to me in November of last year. Okay, October of last year, and I was playing that guitar today. It sounds like I put them on, and I don't play that one as much. Brand new.
Incredible.
It's incredible, and I'm not doing that as a sales pitch because I'm not endorsing the product. I just love the product, so they'll really last. Listen, fantastic. We're going to let everybody go here, so I'll say goodbye to you off the air. Don't take off, Oz. A big thank you again to Michelle at Madding PR. Thank you so very much for your time and assistance making this happen tonight, and I'm sure we'll be working together. We work with her with Damon Johnson as well too. So very, very nice. Everyone have a fantastic weekend. I'll be doing a show on Sunday as well too. Come back and check that out. Watch our Facebook for that. Check out all of Oz's links down in the description down below, and there's also several throughout the chat here as well too. Have a great weekend, everyone, and we'll look forward to seeing you right here very, very soon. And until then, cheers.
Hey, you're still here? Eric Jr. here, reminding you to check out our full lineup of quality merch. Available right now in the Broadstash Boutique. Quality products and fast shipping. Visit broadstash.com today.
I am now on Patreon. If you enjoy my content and wish to support my channel and what I do, then please check out my Patreon page at patreon.com/evhgeartv. Your support assures the continued growth of this channel and a fun community in which to share our love for Van Halen, music gear, and much more.
My name is Eric and I'm playing Wolfgang guitar.
Video production services provided by Design 39 Media. Visit design39media.com for all your website, photography, and video production needs. Microphones for EVH and Gear TV are provided by Rode Microphones, and official Van Halen merchandise is provided by VanHalenStore.com.